I truly can't think of another time when I've been happier to do an astrology video or more eager to do a video. The new moon just occurred, gosh, a couple of hours ago, 11:59 a.m. today, May the 11th, Pacific time. And as you know, I do my new moon videos after a new moon, which makes me a little different than everybody else. And I know that sometimes people find that frustrating and puzzling. I just don't know that you necessarily need to be thinking about the new moon energy before the new moon necessarily, as long as you know where the sun is at and where Mercury and Venus are at in their transits, you know what is being set up for the new moon and how. But again, I do my videos a little differently. I try to set those up a little differently, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so let's just let's let me build this video like I normally do. Let me start with, sort of the definition of new moon energies, the new moon in Taurus, and then talk about rulerships, ownerships, the eclipses, everything that I'm sort of excited to talk about. The biggest reason why I'm happy to be doing this new moon video is that it is a constructive new moon in terms of the transits that it is there's some really nice transits that it is encapsulating. There's a nice transit that it is making, and there's a nice transit that it is encapsulating. The astrology at any given time is never completely cloudless, so we do have one transit that is a little bit problematic that is also going to imprint itself on this particular new moon, or this new moon cycle that takes us to the solar eclipse new moon in Gemini, June the 10th. So let me say that again. The new moon today, May the 11th, sets up a 4-week period, a 4-week activity cycle related to the sign of Taurus, and more importantly, the house the sign of Taurus occupies in your chart and what that house stands for the next 4 weeks. We've got 2 planets that have already moved into Gemini. The sun will move into Gemini in a week's time, and there will be all that Geminian activity, which is why it is set up for this particular video. Yesterday's video focused on Mercury's transit in Gemini, and I will expand on that more now. So the Gemini energy, because the new moons are happening, as I've explained later in the signs, the personal planets right now, based on the way things are, based on where the planets are in the sky, a new moon happens in a particular sign, and the sun, shortly after the new moon, about a week after the new moon right now, a little longer than a week after the new moon, is moving into the next sign. So the next sign is going to start buzzing, but we're still we can't, you will find that you are still preoccupied by and dealing with actions related to where Taurus sits in your chart for the next 4 weeks. And the next 4 weeks, next 28 days, takes us to the next new moon, which will be in the sign of Gemini. It will be a solar eclipse on June the 10th. So from May the 11th to June the 10th, 4-week Taurus-related cycle. And more importantly, I'll repeat again, where does Taurus sit in your chart? What house does that occupy? And what does that house stand for? Now, we have already had, for about 3 weeks now, the sun in the sign of Taurus. We have also had, till relatively recently, Mercury and Venus in the signs of Taurus. So Mercury's transit in Taurus, Venus's transits in Taurus, and the sun's transit in Taurus have already been either bringing opportunities or communications, or certainly been bringing a subconscious focus on this Taurus portion of our charts. And what the new moon does is that with all this percolating that we have been doing for a good 3 or 4 weeks already in the sign of Taurus, the new moon gives us the energy or the impetus or the spark, the starting point to take 4 weeks to take action in this part of chart based on all this percolating that we have been doing. So if you know where Taurus sits in your chart, you will know what I mean. What have you been thinking about? What are your priorities? What are your goals? What is the subconscious thinking, opportunities, communications, transactions over the past 3 or 4 weeks led you to mentally create some sort of a to-do list or a set of actions that you feel like you need to take based on where Taurus sits in your chart, and this new moon gives you the impetus to go ahead and do that. It gives you the clearing to do that. Part of the reason why I also feel happy and overjoyed is that, Mercury conjuncted the North Node yesterday, and I certainly felt the excitement of that, or the challenge of that and the excitement of that. And Mercury conjuncted the North Node in Gemini, and I'm referring to yesterday's video, and I will place a link to that video at the end of this video, so you're welcome to take a look at it. I would take a look at it whenever you have time, because that video covers transits. Mercury goes retrograde in Gemini at the end of May, 29th of May till the 22nd of June. So that video covers a set of transits that will take us to July the 11th. So that is a video worth looking at. I will place a link to that at the end of this video. But I felt the energy and the innovation related to that particular transit till about Sunday. But because the time prior to a new moon is so flat and so exhausted and so asking for rest and purging, that I found, the 48 hours before this new moon kind of exhausting and depleting. Also, when the moon is in Taurus, the moon in Taurus is happy and exalted, but it is a famously resilient but lazy moon, indulgent moon. Slow and steady wins the race kind of moon, works at its own pace, and content to it's not an active moon, let's just put it that way. Okay, irrespective, we have had the new moon. It has inaugurated a 4-week cycle as to where Taurus sits in your chart, and 2 weeks from now we run into the full moon eclipse. 2 weeks after new moon, 14 days after new moon is always a full moon, so energy between now and the full moon is going to escalate. At the full moon, we're going to experience a certain amount of intensity. It's a full moon eclipse, so that intensity, we're going to experience a fair amount of intensity that we've already been experiencing. And then, of course, 2 weeks after that is the full moon coming down to the next new moon solar eclipse in Gemini. This brings me to point number 2 in this video. Part of the reason why I'm glad that this particular new moon has something constructive about it and positive about it is because the eclipses that we're going to be dealing with in 2 weeks' time and 4 weeks' time, the lunar eclipse on May the 26th and the solar eclipse on June the 10th, both have a certain amount of heaviness associated with them. And this new moon certainly formally pushes us into eclipse season, because 2 weeks from now is an eclipse, 2 weeks after that is another eclipse, and then 2 weeks from then we'll have a full moon in Capricorn, which will formally close out this sort of, let's just say, 6 weeks or so that packs these eclipses in there together. But the eclipses have their own timeline, and these intense eclipses, the lunar eclipse on the 26th of May, March the 26th, and February the 14th, and December the 14th, when we had the solar eclipse in Sagittarius. This lunar eclipse on May the 26th is in Sagittarius, so December 14th, 2020, February 14th, 2021, March the 26th, 2021, and May the 26th, upcoming 2021, of course, important dates related to that eclipse. So eclipse season, the eclipses are always working. 2021 is one of the few years where the eclipses are almost overshadowed by the Saturn-Uranus square, Saturn in Aquarius squaring Uranus in Taurus. But again, when you bring up something like the eclipses, any video gets threatened to go into the interpretation of the eclipses, but that is for future videos. Let's bring it back now to the new moon in Taurus. But just know that I'm glad and grateful that at least this new moon cycle in Taurus has something positive and constructive and positive looking about it, when we will very soon find, if we are not already, and some of the news is certainly bringing us there, eclipse energies are going to start percolating as well. So it'll be nice to have something grounded and productive. It is a new moon in Taurus. Archetypally, it concerns your resources, our resources. What do we own? Our finances, our stability, our sense of enjoyment of life and what we have, and our reserves and how we use them to pursue our goals, finding the right balance and the right flow with nature and with life, and flow with a capital F, but also in terms of how that translates to our sense of abundance and sense of plenty, and most our sense of resources, our emotional resources, our independent resources, whether it is emotional independence or financial independence. And it is a constructive new moon, and I'll come to that in a second again with more detail, that gives us a more self-interested and necessary self-focus at a time when the eclipses will be start to create, if they haven't already for you in those dates that I mentioned, on December 14th, Feb 14th, March the 26th, and May the 26th, eclipses will start to create their own undeniable and uncontrollable change. Uncontrollable because eclipses are at a time when God takes the wheel, as I like to say, and you don't have fated changes occur. With this new moon in Taurus, however, there's a lot of power that we have and we have been given to pursue certain goals around making those goals real and taking care of what I might call the real world. I say that in a tongue-in-cheek way because the question, of course, is what is the real world? Is this material world, 3D, time-space reality really the real world, or is there another real world out there? But that is a different meditation. I will say that in brass tacks, very present, very pragmatic terms, this new moon in Taurus is concerned about who you are at in terms of your relationships, independence versus codependency, with a focus on independence, and who you are in terms of your finances and resources. Again, a focus on your independence and the pursuit of your goals and your sense of stability and your sense of inner solidity and emotional strength and resilience and patience and an enjoyment of what it is that you feel belongs to you and nurtures you, very Taurian word, and gives you succor and, 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 and gives you the power and the ability to go out there and make your goals real. So it's a very grounded, practical, earthy new moon. The moon is exalted in Taurus. Helpful when the eclipses are coming up and we're formally being introduced into eclipse season and the changes that are going to occur that are going to be challenging, typically, over the next 6 weeks or so, if they have not already been occurring. And not everyone feels the eclipses in a negative way, I have to say. For some people, eclipses can create wonderful, fantastic, positive opportunities, sudden opportunities, offers, and something that gets you closer to what it is that you want to do. Or so eclipses, more about the eclipses later. Now, this new moon in Taurus is ruled by the planet Venus, because Venus rules Taurus. Venus is in Gemini. Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is strong in its own sign of Gemini. We've already covered the Venus rulership of this new moon by talking about financial and emotional independence. I will leave that there. Finances, relationships, typically, I would say, are at the center, at the heart of Venus, the planet of flow, good fortune, flow, being one with the universe, the feminine planet, the feminine forces of natural gestation, growth, knowledge, and connection to spirit. Mercury is the dispositor of the chart because it is overseeing everything that is going on in Gemini right now, because that is where it is. And yesterday's video focused on Mercury in Gemini. Somewhere, briefly, I will say, whatever's going on in the Taurus side of the chart and the goals that you pursue will require you to exercise Geminian strengths, picking up the phone and talking to people, emailing, writing, socializing, networks, gossip, the word on the street in a positive way. More on that in yesterday's video. I'll place a link to it. That's why I did yesterday's video. And Venus, as it goes through Gemini, during this new moon cycle at the end of the month, when we have just shortly after the full moon in Sagittarius, and on the day when Mercury goes retrograde, will conjunct a Mercury retrograde. So communication about relationships, don't be surprised at the pursuit of your goals over the next 4 weeks, and especially over the next 2 weeks, if they require interaction, communication, and an ability to be quick on your feet. Mercury and Jupiter oppose each other, and it's always fascinating to me which planets are opposite each other and enemies of each other, right? With Venus and Mars, male, female, we have a kind of an opposition of archetypes. With Jupiter, you would expect the enmity to be with Saturn, but it's actually with Mercury. With Saturn, you would expect it to be Jupiter, but it's actually the moon, which makes sense. Your emotional sense of contentment is rocked by Saturn, which has a tendency to make us emotionally unhappy. by the discipline and the lessons that it's trying to teach us. With Mercury and Jupiter, it is very much this question, interestingly, about the real world. Mercury deals with what is present in this 3D reality. The purpose of interaction, communication, and transactions, writing, speaking, teaching, skill acquisition, people with a sun in Gemini, diplomacy, education, right, communication, and just knowing the ability to understand political dynamics in any organization or group or situation with a small p. It doesn't have to be and should not be crafty and manipulative, although it can get there with if the negative side of the Gemini archetype is tapped into. But you need the Gemini energy in order to get things done. And people with strong Gemini placements will tell you that part of the reason why they are successful is because they know when to act and they're quick on their feet and they do the work and they send the emails and they write. It's not a procrastination planet. Jupiter, of course, would come in and argue and say, and the full moon in Sagittarius is going to be ruled by Jupiter 2 weeks' time. That's why I said yesterday, information is not the truth. If Mercury is concerned with information, Jupiter is concerned with truth. But Jupiter tends to plod at its own time and retreat and become a little hermit-like and take the time to sift all the data and the information, and is very concerned with issues related to morality and integrity and the right action. Mercury is much more interested in being present, knowing where the opportunities are, applying for the opportunities, communicating, interacting, networking, sales, interviews, getting a job, figuring out what's going on around you, getting the feedback. This mercurial activity is very, very important. It's essential as we navigate the real world. Jupiter, of course, would come in and say, since Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces, and say, oh, really? Is that the real world? Or is the non-3D reality the real world? For our purposes right now, and with this new moon, I'm happy to say that both the new moon and the dispositing planet Mercury are encouraging us all to take real action in the pursuit of our goals. And as I said yesterday, we have about 3 weeks till about the 25th of May when Mercury continues to be direct. And for the most part, as far as I'm concerned, there's forward movement happening to go ahead and continue to go after whatever it is that we think is a priority, and we will find that the universe responds in turn. I'm not going to talk about Mercury going retrograde in this video. That's covered in yesterday's video, so take a look at that because that carries that narrative forward. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the transits that this new moon makes. The new moon is sextile Neptune. I don't care about sextiles. More and more, I don't care about sextiles. We as human beings barely take advantage of trines. I'm going to encourage you to pay attention to trines more than sextiles. This is what makes squares and oppositions so much more powerful as transits, because we feel them, because they're uncomfortable, because they create blocks and obstacles and challenges. They're dynamic. Trines, which are opportunities that we instinctively feel that we need to act on, very often, because there's no pressure to act on them, it's a sense of flow. Very often we as human beings don't get in the boat and take advantage of that flow. Again, if we tapped into that Geminian side, again, if we tapped into and found an integration between our intuitive side and our mental ability to use information and data to go after what we want, we would probably lead happier lives. But what tends to happen with trines is we tend to procrastinate, or our inner demons get in the way, and we don't always take advantage of the flow of the ideas of the things that are bubbling up, whereas a square or an opposition will force us to act. Now, the new moon is sextile Neptune. I'm ignoring that, and if you want to criticize me for it, you can, but I guarantee you, if you can feel it, fantastic. There is an opportunity there if you know where Pisces sits in your chart. There could be something that you do over the next 4 weeks that creates an opportunity for greater stability. I said I would ignore the sextile, and I'm not. There could be an opportunity if you know where Pisces sits in your chart that a certain set of activities you take over the next 2 to 4 weeks actually help stabilize, can help meet both sets of goals. Whatever your goals are or preoccupations are with stabilizing the Pisces part of your chart, as well as pursuing the goals related to where Taurus sits in your chart. Okay? There we have it. That's the sextile. The more interesting transit, which is a little too far for my taste, is the trine to Pluto in Capricorn. My darlings, this new moon is trine Pluto a little over 5 degrees. Again, for me, that orb is a little wide, but for all I know right now, the moon is already trined Pluto, and the sun is going to trine Pluto in about 5 or 6 days. When I say that there's an opportunity here over the next 4 weeks, and particularly over the next week, to achieve or put forward, to continue to plant seeds and go after your goals in very tangible ways, and to think about the real world in terms of your money, your finances, your career goals, your ambitions, I'm talking archetypally. Now, if you know which houses Capricorn and Taurus occupy in your chart and what they stand for, this will make even more sense to you. Okay? There is, these two earth signs are activated, and take action. If you know what it is that and especially if it has that communication component to it or that Geminian component to it, harness the Gemini archetypal energy and take action and pursue goals where Taurus sits in your chart, so you can successfully transform where Capricorn sits in your chart. There. A trine between the new moon and Pluto, very powerful to make powerful moves and transform certain aspects of your life that need transforming in terms of pursuit of your goals and facilitating constructive and hopefully positive change. It's nice to have a new moon like this in the middle of a lot of turmoil. If you're living in India, I don't need to expand on that. The eclipses are functioning, so it's nice if we boil this down to us personally, where we do have agency to go after something that is personal to us and important to us with regard to our goals concerning our emotional and financial independence and stability and growth. And with Pluto and Capricorn, it has a career focus, but that really depends on where Capricorn and Taurus sit in your chart. So I'm going to let you ponder that. As I said, no new moon is cloudless, full moon is cloudless. We do have a square between Mars and Saturn at this time, at the time of the new moon. And so there is action that needs to be taken to heal. Mars is in Cancer, Chiron is in Aries. So if you know, again, what those houses are, where Cancer sits and Aries sits, what those houses are and what those houses stand for, you will know and understand how Mars in Cancer is squaring Chiron in Aries. And as I explained to you in yesterday's video, there's something about this time that is both requiring us to take advantage of the flow and the harmonious transits, because the third transit I want to talk about is Mercury trining Saturn. Both the trines, the new moon trining Pluto and Mercury trining Saturn, are very real world, constructive communication, making the most of your potential, not going into the path of least resistance. With Mercury trining Saturn, it is activating that Saturn-Uranus square, which is going to become more active as the next few weeks go on once Uranus goes retrograde. Saturn and Uranus is a very important transit. I'll put a link to a video I did on Saturn and Uranus at the end of this, so I don't take a lot of time here. But not falling into the path of least resistance where Uranus sits in your chart. But more importantly, with Mercury, let me just simplify this. Both new moon trine Pluto and Mercury trine Saturn are very constructive. Mercury is dispositing this chart, very helpful and very constructive in the pursuit of goals and the pursuit of goals to fulfill your highest potential. You know what you need to do. Do it. The eclipses are raging and will become more intense. Take advantage of this new moon. In 3 weeks' time, Mercury will go retrograde and will slow things down. We'll feel that as early as the 25th of May already. And on the 15th of May, in a few days' time, Mercury enters the shadow period. So we're going to have to start to become conscious of the ground it is going to cover 3 times. Future videos. The Mars squares Chiron. On the one hand, you have a violent planet like Mars. I'm going to look at the violence of the squaring Chiron, a planet of healing. Again, with the eclipses, this iconography can't be lost on people who are dealing with the ravages of the pandemic in a very intense manner. You have the male planet, the planet of fires and burning and aggression and violence, squaring Chiron, the body that is associated with wounded healing. On a more personal level, though, which is what my videos tend to be focused on, this new moon provides the opportunity to pursue goals, but it also provides the opportunity or the need to take defensive action around something. And where Cancer sits in your chart and where Aries sits in your chart will give you that clue. Where Aries sits in your chart, something is trying to be healed. And the only way it's going to heal is to re-expose you to the wound and get you to, from a place of greater maturity now, address and look at what the triggers are. It's Chiron healing is powerful, not necessarily easy, and not what we would find in sort of conventional it's not like, oh, sit down with someone and talk. It's much more personal. It's much more around, why does this hurt me? What are my triggers? Who am I interacting with? Am I somehow reintroduced into an environment? What am I learning about the people who have created these triggers? And how am I replicating these situations? The work is your work. It is inner work. It is inner growth. It is inner rewiring. With Mars in Cancer squaring that, there's a challenge, perhaps some sort of a violent, aggressive, assertive challenge that also needs to be addressed. And both Mercury and Gemini, to some extent, and this new moon encode that. So you will be dealing with two separate sets of energies. The more positive that you must avail of, pursuit of your goals, financial, emotional independence. There's a lot of power in those transits, new moon trine Pluto, and especially Mars trine Saturn, because that's much closer. And then there's Mercury trine Saturn. And then there's the Mars square Chiron, which, on a more positive side, Mars will give you the energy to defend yourself and take action to protect yourself and to put your boundaries where they need to be. And when it comes to a square, you have to take action, especially the faster planet, in this case Mars, has to achieve something and take action and get something done, and lessons need to be learned so that the slow planet Chiron can continue to do its job. Mars and Chirons have come to a stop sign. Chiron is waiting for Mars to go, do what it needs to do so that it can then cross the stoplight as well. So the need to take action to defend yourself. Where's Cancer? Themes of nurture, family, home, land, real estate, nurture, early childhood, and Aries, yourself, your true nature, your unconditioned nature, the nature you came in with. There's something there that needs to be paid attention to. And the chart is giving you the power. Not only is it giving you the power, it is asking you to take action. So, two sets of actions you need to take, my darlings. Pursuit of goals. And if there's something you feel like, I've had enough of this, I need to protect something because it's going to help me put some boundaries somewhere, take some action somewhere, because it's going to help me heal something. Those energies are right. Take action in both those areas. Juggle what you need to. You have about 2 to 3 weeks in which to take a fair amount of action. The eclipses are going to be raging. We're going to talk about those in future videos. So we will come to that. It will, it will be helpful for you to know where Taurus and Saturn are in your chart, where Gemini is in your chart, where Cancer is, these subsequent signs, because a lot of this iconography will make sense. Outside of that, if you don't have that information, just think about, are there things that have been percolating for the past 3 or 4 weeks where you really feel like I need to take action, and you're like, okay, it's now or never, I've got to do it, then do it. And second, is there something where you're feeling challenged in some way? Is it a question of boundaries? Is it a question of what you need to do in order to heal yourself? Some of this healing could literally be physical. And with Mars, there's often an impact. There can be bleeding, there can be surgery, there can be hurt, there can be damage, there can be fire. In other cases, this is much more on a soul level, soul healing and challenges to that, but the challenges have to be met. Okay? It's a nice new moon in terms of giving you the energy. As I said, in 2 or 3 weeks' time, we're going to be dealing with a different set of integration that we're going to need to do. The eclipses are going to act no matter what. So Where you have agency, take action, because at least those things are in your control. And over the next 2 or 3 weeks, you might see results. So go for it. If you found this video useful, feel free to share it. Those of you who watched yesterday's video and today's video will be able to see the difference the new moon has in terms of my energy itself to be articulate. Not that based on the past 30 seconds you'd call me articulate. Yeah, and just it's a cleaner, clearer, more nascent, bud on a tree. The shoots are coming out of the ground kind of energy. So harness that, take advantage of that. If you found this video useful, feel free to share it, tell your friends about it. Feel free to like it, leave a comment on it if there's something here that resonates that you feel like sharing. Always fascinating to see. Thank you to everyone who left comments about the sound on my videos. I'm still working through that and processing everything that was said there. Very, very helpful. So grateful. I am so grateful for you guys, those of you who follow, leave comments, etc. It's really lovely to feel like you have a place, or a place of community in a certain sense. So those of you who watch regularly and interact, even if you don't interact but watch regularly, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. And subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Click on the bell icon next to the subscribe button so that you can be notified whenever I do new videos. And my email address is going to be in the subject area of the description area underneath this video. So you can reach out to me there to inquire about rates for personal readings, or rates for, I can also make you a chart that is easy to read that tells you which planets are in which houses and which signs and what those houses stand for. So you will need to know your birth time for that, but do not send me your personal information until you first inquire about rates, so that you know you want to move forward with me or not. I'm going to leave it there. Happy new moon.